Sorry guys, everyone's like sending me messages now that I've gotten online. Give me 1 sec. Okay guys, okay. Sorry. I'm Little Miss Popular, I guess, or something. Okay, so I am trying to figure out this source issue on my TikTok live studio. It's not doing what I want it to do. You know what I mean? So, we're figuring it out. But I just want to say I love y'all. Thank you for being here. Let's see here. I can do this. Add this source. That might be a little wonky. But you know what? It's all good. It's all good. It's fine. We're a little wonky sometimes, you know? And that's just how life is. Life's a little wonky. Life's a little crunchy. Life's a little wah-wah. Life's a little wee-wee. Life's a little waka-waka. Thank you, I believe in you. Super Poppy, I got a Poppy. Poppy. Feels good, man. Feels good. 3 stream watch streak. Ayo, thank you. Sometimes life's a little crossing the streams. Wait, what? Okay, so you see here. I want to move my chat. Okay, how do I get an image? Guys, we're all figuring life out together. You know what? I love y'all. You guys should love y'all. I hope you love you guys like I love you guys. Because, like, I love you guys a lot. Okay. Wonky. Okay, I got a clock tower in the back. How fitting. Alright. Okay, we're ready to go live on TikTok. I think. How do I set a thing? Live goal. Set up a live goal. Oh my god, there's dolphins. I want dolphins. 20 dolphins. And I'll dance. Okay, I think I got my TikTok live set up. Okay. I think that's good. I think we are good. We're good on TikTok. Okay, TikTok live should be good. Okay, we're gonna watch a little bit of my friends' YouTube videos. So let's start with like popular, I suppose. Let me move this over so you guys can see it properly on the TikTok stream. I think that will be a good spot. Also the chat, I think needs to go here-ish. Okay, this can get a little larger. How's everyone doing today, guys? How's your day? All right. We're gonna watch my friend Tara's videos.
Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel.
Go check out her channel, guys.
If you don't know me or are new here, I'm Tara from Earth. I'm a universal, intuitive, multidimensional energy worker, and I am here to help empower you and others through an awakening time. I talk a lot about universal truths, astrology, galactic energy. I go a little bit into what's happening in the world, in the United States. And I also will be offering a lot of tools and activations to help you stay empowered through the awakening. So if any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to like and subscribe. I also post a lot on my Instagram and my TikTok. Okay, let's talk a little bit about an awakening and fear. An awakening is a very deep, transformative process, as you probably know, but it's also always accompanied by fear. It's always good to know that fear is what acts as a really powerful teacher during an awakening process because it exposes the internal barriers that keep us feeling stuck. So it brings up our limiting beliefs, attachments, programming, old patterns, and unhealed wounds. So you can think of fear just like the devil card in the tarot deck, which represents the illusion of being bound. Everyone's always scared of the devil card when they are first getting into tarot, which is really ironic how it reflects the fear that we have during an awakening process. So on the devil card, the chains that it shows, they are self-imposed and loose, waiting for us, the two people on the card, to recognize their own power and set themselves free. So fear is a motivator, but it's also a mirror. It reflects the areas of our lives where we feel powerless, unworthy, or unaligned. So during an awakening, fear really pushes us and challenges us to confront these illusions and ask really hard questions. And this is the hardest part of an awakening. What am I holding on to that no longer serves me? Where have I given away my power? Is there really an external threat to me, or is this an illusion that I've created? So fear is pushing us out of our comfort zones because freedom doesn't exist there. So true freedom begins with the realization that the limitations that we feel are often born from within and not from our external circumstances or situations. It's really a shift in perspective, recognizing that what binds us is not the world outside of us, but the beliefs that we've accepted as truth. So an important thing to know is that to pull yourself out of fear, it requires a lot of accountability and responsibility. The devil card is actually ruled by Capricorn. Capricorn is all about responsibility and discipline. So taking accountability requires a lot of courage. This means you need to acknowledge your own role in the situations, even when it's really uncomfortable. Fear also makes us really defensive. It's our ego going into overdrive when we are feeling unsafe. Therefore, avoids responsibility out of shame or self-preservation. So it's about taking ownership of your own life and recognizing your own power to pull yourself out of fear. Accountability isn't about blaming others or punishing ourselves. It's about recognizing that you have the ability to change, pull yourself out of fear, and use your your past mistakes as stepping stones for your own growth. So when you fully embrace accountability, fear will begin to dissolve. Fear becomes less of a barrier and more of your own guide, showing you where your healing and transformation are needed most. Freedom during an awakening isn't about the absence of fear, but it's learning to see through it. Fear really can distort our own reality, making us believe that we are small or incapable. But the truth is, fear is just our ego trying to remain in control, because awakening threatens the ego and the ego's comfort zone. If you're more interested in learning about the ego, I have another video about releasing fear and how to get to surrender. So go check that video out. Overall, it's a learning process to trust your own inner wisdom, learning to walk alongside.
I've seen that tapestry before behind.
It's really here as a tool and a compass to guide us more towards our authentic selves. So understand that fear often shows up at the brink of transformation. So there's a lot of people in fear right now with what's going on in the United States and in the entire world. Understand we are in the middle of an awakening, and the week of January 20th really accelerated.
Live visibility restricted. Your live is not eligible for recommendation and restricted in search results because it contains unoriginal or reproduced content. This is in line with TikTok live section under community guidelines. So you can't do react content on TikTok anymore.
When you stop resisting fear and you start to work with it, you will begin to alchemize it into courage, authenticity, truth, and action.
So okay, anyways, guys, go check out our channel. I'm gonna try and restart my TikTok live. I didn't know that. I did not know that. Okay. Noted. Let me see if I can restart this and it fixes it. Because that's a little weird thing I didn't know about. Hi guys. Hello. I'm gonna restart my live. Give me just a second. It's an interesting little tidbit I did not know. TikTok, you tricky little mother crack blackjack. Alright, so how do I even stop the live on TikTok? TikTok live is not super intuitive. It's not. It is not. Okay, I'll be right back, guys. Okay. Hopefully this doesn't do the same thing again. Today we learn. Today we do learn. Yes. Learning is good. We love learning. Well, so if I'm gonna do React content, I should not do it on TikTok. I should not do React content on TikTok. Because it flags it as unoriginal content. So, everyone go follow my friend Tara. Go follow my friend Tara. I was just trying to show off her YouTube videos for y'all to go check out. But, alas, TikTok doesn't want me to do that. So, figuring it out. see all of y'all. What up, y'all? Having a little bit of lag. I think it's the TikTok studio that causes quite a bit of a lag. To be honest with y'all, just grilling and chilling. What are you grilling? That sounds delightful. Yum, dude, I'm so jelly. A barbecue sounds so fire right now. I wish I got invited to a barbecue. I'll probably do more barbecues when I'm back in Austin, I imagine. So I'm excited for that. That's so dope, Violent. I almost called you Violet. Excuse me, oh my goodness, that was terrible. Hi Warrior, hi Crazy. Trying to figure out where this vlog got placed. No, I don't want to do that. No, cancel. Naughty computer. Okay, here it is. I hear birds chirping. Brussels or asparagus? Oh, bro, I love both. Crispy Brussels sprouts. Asparagus is really good too, with lots of butter. I am a big fan. I am an asparagus stan. flag is not eligible for recommendation and restricted in search results because it contains unoriginal or reproduced content. Okay, is it because my OBS is my main source? But if you're not letting me use my camera until I meet your requirements, TikTok. Oh my gosh. TikTok, I don't know why you do what you do, but you're doing it, and I don't understand it. So if someone from TikTok can give me a call and help me, figure out why. Unlock virtual camera by going live on Live Studio 3 more times. Okay. Unlock virtual camera by going live on Live Studio 3 more times for 25 minutes each. Mobile live streams do not count. Validation may take up to 48 hours. Okay, so I just gotta get like a separate camera instead of screen sharing. So I have to go get another camera because it's not gonna let me like dual use this camera. So let me go do that. We're troubleshooting today. Dude, both garlic butter, you convinced me. Yes, they're so good. already flagged for not having original content.
I'm going to give a few ways that
we'll
you
just
can
watch more of
begin
Tara.
to work through fear, especially during a really intense awakening time. So the first thing is to always acknowledge your fear without any judgment. You can't be pushing your fear away or labeling it as bad or negative. It's simply just acknowledging that it's here, that it's present. You can sit with it, you can breathe into it, and really just try to allow it to reveal what it's trying to teach you. Fear will always carry messages of where you need to heal and transform. So always look at it as the powerful teacher. Remember that fear is not here to punish you, but it is here to guide you. So it's about reframing fear as a catalyst for yourself. Instead of seeing it as something that's holding you back, use it as a motivator. Use it to ignite you, to make you into the magician that you are. Really ask yourself, what is this fear showing me? What opportunity for growth is hidden within this discomfort that I'm feeling? This shift in perspective really helps you find that bigger perspective on what fear is doing for you. It's helping you take those steps towards accountability, and it will help you move from avoidance to empowerment. Grounding is going to be very important as we move through this transformative time. So making sure you are grounding to the present moment, coming back into the body is going to be really helpful for you to navigate fear, anxiety, or any emotions that come up. Remember that fear really thrives on the what if. It always is thinking ahead. It's thinking of the consequences. Remember, fear just keeps your ego safe. So grounding yourself is really important, and staying in the present moment helps you surrender. Surrender to the what ifs, surrender to your own anxiety. Surrender is just about being in the present moment, which can really help you bring the focus back to yourself, back to your truth, and just get realigned to your own energy. Remember that you don't need to conquer all of your fears at once. This is a process. Fear is the biggest thing we came to conquer in this human experience. So this may take some time, but it's always good to just tackle something that you're afraid of. I'm afraid of losing my freedom in this way. I'm afraid of this potential threat to me. I'm afraid that if I say my opinion, I'm going to get judged. So these are some things that you can start looking at and start tackling on your own. Just remember that each step, each little tiny fear that you conquer really builds a lot of confidence, and it gets you more into the energy of being courageous and being empowered. Fear also loves to disconnect us from our intuition. That's what it does, because it's like we are in full-on fight or flight mode. Our ego takes the wheel and our intuition gets left behind. Understand that our intuition is the feminine energy that is trying to also come through. Our feminine energy is just as important as the masculine. It's our feminine energy that is here to reassure the ego that the ego is safe. So when you are coming back and grounding into the present moment, take some time from the noise, take time off social media, and try to open your feminine channel to allow those intuitive messages to come through. When we have a lot of fear, we can go into survival mode, fight or flight, and we can sometimes get into freeze mode. So a lot of times our feminine energy has a lot to say when we are in fear, but our fear and our ego doesn't want to see it because it's just in protection mode. So really set some time if you are feeling really overwhelmed, have some anxiety, ground yourself, open your heart chakra, try to allow your feminine to soothe your ego. I also talk about the importance of the feminine and masculine energies and their relationship, their inner dialogue in my video of how to release fear and surrender. So you can go watch that video. I go deeper into this dialogue. But the dialogue from your feminine to your masculine energy is really important, especially when you are in fear. And the last thing I want to talk about is just remembering your power. That is what we are here to do. That is what we came to do. Fear is what makes us feel powerless, but awakening is about reclaiming that power. So always constantly remind yourself that you are the creator of your reality. That fear is just showing you where you need to reclaim power. You have the ability to transform fear through your own strength, one choice at a time. So fear is often an illusion that we create, that our ego creates to keep us safe. Understand that you hold the power to create your reality, to confront and combat this illusion with your own unique frequency. So understand that fear is a necessary part to an awakening. There's no running from it. It's here to burn away what is false. It's here to help you transcend limitations of your own ego and to leave behind the truth of who we really are. So when you stop running from it, discover that it is here to teach you, that it is actually a motivator and it is a fuel for growth. The chains that you once felt were so heavy on you will begin to dissolve. Freedom isn't something that we find outside of ourselves. Freedom is the gift from within. And awakening is the process of uncovering it one step at a time. So next time that fear arises, try to lean in instead of resisting. Try to thank it for the lessons that it's teaching you and allow it to guide you closer to your power and your true self, because that is where true freedom resides. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be making a lot more content to help you navigate the awakening. If there's any specific content you want me to talk about or go into, let me know. If you want to connect with me more, watch more content, all of my links are in my description. Stay grounded and thank you for watching.
We need more car karaoke, just saying. Honestly, yeah, I just need to figure out a better hotspot situation because the active streaming while traveling was a little bit of a learning curve. So I have Starlink, but the thing with the Starlink is that it needs to be set up. It needs to be set up to, you know, be a certain direction. If you guys have Starlink, you kind of know what I'm saying. But yeah, so I need to explore a few other options, I think. Is it disconnecting all the time? Yeah, it's just naturally, like, as you're driving down the road, service can get a little bit more spotty. So that's the issue that I was having. But we will find ways to figure it out. It's all a learning experience, you know? So this is my friend Tara from Earth. So I really want you guys to go check her out and subscribe to her. She's a very dear friend of mine. She helped with a really cool thing that me and some other friends are working on. So I really want you guys to go check out her stuff, go show her some love. She's going to be live streaming on YouTube hopefully soon. So definitely go check her out. And so yeah, we'll just watch some more of her videos.
Welcome to Off Script with me, Tara from Earth, reporting live from Earth while trying to stay chill and regulated on a not-so-chill planet. This space is for inspiring conversations around consciousness, connection, embodiment, future self-alignment, and becoming the creator of your reality within the human experience, without pretending any of it is neat or linear. So, let's embody the future together. Hi everybody, welcome to Off Script with me, Tara from Earth. This is my first podcast, and I'm a little nervous about it, not gonna lie. I have been making content for
Episode 1! Let's
years,
go, we're here for it.
I kind of take a lot of
I'm
breaks.
gonna be starting my own podcast too, guys.
I've just been called to step back in.
But I love seeing other
so
friends'
be patient
podcasts.
with me. This podcast will be evolving over time. This is just starting. Hopefully
she'll
I can
have
maybe
me as a
inspire
guest.
others to just start what you feel called to, what you feel aligned to. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the perfect setup, the perfect equipment, but just start. And
She's got a great setup,
this is
honestly,
really
in my
pushing me out of my
opinion.
comfort zone. Podcasts are
Makes
just
me wanna get
different.
my
There's a
plants.
different energy to them. So yeah, I'm excited and hopefully excited for others to join me on my cozy couch where we can have some inspiring conversations. So I've been on a conscious spiritual journey for over 10 years now, and my goal is really to help people get back to their truth, to cut through the distortion and cut through even the spiritual ego, the spiritual fluff, the escapism, and to really reconnect people with their true sovereignty for true ascension. My work lives at the intersection of multidimensional energy work, future self-alignment, storytelling, conscious media, branding, and just creator expansion. But really at the core of it, it's just helping people return to who they really are. Throughout this podcast, I will be sharing a lot of my experiences in the spiritual world, in the spiritual community, things that have helped me or not helped me on my own healing journey, things that I've witnessed over the last decade in spiritual spaces, things I believe are missing, and where I really feel consciousness is evolving, even beyond spirituality. A lot of people right now want expansion without loss. A lot of people want to bring in higher timelines without full surrender. A lot of people want transformation without the discomfort. But true ascension really requires full surrender, full embodiment, full polarity, responsibility, and just the willingness to allow all old identities dissolve. So yeah, we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about the spiritual ego. We're going to talk about bypassing the love and light culture, the addiction we have to comfort, our relationships, connections, and the patterns that keep people believing that they are growing while they are just really staying trapped in the same cycles. So this is a space for honest conversations about consciousness, creation, embodiment, and what it really takes to become the creator of your reality and what it actually takes to embody New Earth. So I know that was kind of a long intro, but I just really want to set the tone for myself too, to know what I have to work with moving forward. And like I said, this is going to continue evolving. But yeah, that's kind of the heart of what I'm getting at. So to really begin, I just kind of want to talk about what I'm actually seeing as consciousness accelerates. People are opening, people are waking up, and awareness is expanding. And more people are realizing, oh, they're intuitive, they're psychic, they're powerful, they're connected. But at the same time, there are some very real distortions that are happening inside all of that. And it needs to be talked about. This is the stuff that I don't think very many people talk about. People talk about the shadow work, the inner work, the healing, but no one really wants to talk about where we are moving away from truth within spirituality. Where is it becoming a simulation? Where is it becoming not so authentic anymore? And these are problems I see as I live here in Austin and just all over the world. And through connection on social media, I'm seeing the performance, the simulation of spirituality. and why it's actually keeping people trapped and looped in their own cycles and in within their own matrix. And I'm going to be talking a lot about that. So I'm going to try not to go off on that right now. We all want creation without really fully understanding the true destruction creation requires. And we all want the new identity, the new timeline, the healed world, the expanded version of myself, the purpose, the mission, without really letting the current version of ourselves fully dissolve and surrender to that. And the biggest thing that I've really noticed is just the lack of containment and structure within the spiritual field. The attachment that people still have to
Bye,
identity,
see you later,
to their
Violet. Thanks for hanging
ego.
out.
So it's people who are performing spirituality without actually embodying it. And it can really look deceiving, right? It looks like they know the language, the knowledge. They can post the quotes. They can wear the outfits, the aesthetic. They can show off their sexuality. They can understand the concepts. But true spirituality is actually living when it's uncomfortable, when it really challenges you, when it requires you to change. It's who you are in between those moments. It's who you are when you're at home by yourself. You know, there's this whole aspect of spirituality that is so imperfect and it's so dirty and disgusting and gross. And it's the part of yourself that is hard to look at. It's hard to look at that version of you in the mirror because you are wanting to hide from it. Just true spirituality, even beyond, is just living in the true grit of what it means to be a human and the parts of yourself that are not seen by the world. Who are you in your apartment, in your home? Who are you without the spiritual mask, without the knowledge, without the spiritual label? Who are you? You know, and that is a terrifying question to the ego, and especially the spiritual ego, is asking, who am I? Who am I without all this knowledge? Who am I without the pretty aesthetics and all my crystals and my goddess label or whatever the fuck your label is? Who are you? And that is something that I am here to help talk about, help walk us through, is shedding and being okay not knowing who you are, not knowing who you're becoming. So we love to attach ourselves to spirituality because it gives us an identity. It tells us who we are. It tells us what our purpose is, what our mission is. Oh, I'm a starseed. I'm a goddess. I'm an oracle. I'm a shaman. You know, I'm a medicine healer. And you couldn't be so much further from who you really are. And I think that is why we aren't going to see very many spiritual people take that next step into shedding those identities. But I am here to challenge you. I'm here to challenge others on a spiritual path, other light workers, healers, or anybody who feels called to be a pillar of light. I'm here to really challenge you and ask you, who are you without all your labels? Who are you without all your tools, all your pretty accessories, your altars? You know, who are you without all of that? Because that's when you really start remembering, and that's when your true power does come
happy
online.
Early birthday, Bryce.
This has been a big part of my own journey.
That's dope.
I have
so happy
had
for
to
you.
let go of everything outside of me to come back to who I am. And I allow myself to wake up every day in curiosity, wake up not knowing who I am or what I'm going to do that day, but always knowing that I'm the creator, that I can create whatever I want. But in order to create, you have to destruct. You have to also sit in the unknown and sit in the discomfort of not knowing what you are becoming or what you are about to create. You are not going to be able to love and light your way into a new reality. You cannot avoid conflict, avoid truth, avoid parts of yourself that still need to be integrated. And that's the thing. You cannot create something new while protecting everything that currently exists. I have seen the people chase the highs, and people are constantly still chasing highs. They still chase the breakthroughs, they chase the activations, they chase the next level, the next identity, without really slowing down enough to actually integrate what they've already opened, what's already there, what's already within them. So people are expanding really fast, but no one has the actual capacity or the containment to hold it. So I think true ascension, true spirituality, it comes in those in between moments, in the spaces where you are allowing yourself to forget who you are, to not know who you are, not know where you're going, and to sit in the void. You know, we have to be willing to sit in the void of ourselves. That is actual spirituality. A lot of spiritual people just can't sit in their own discomfort. They can't sit in the void. They can't sit in the unknown of who they are without attaching some sort of language or intellectual spiritual knowledge or esoteric wisdom to why they are doing what they're doing, instead of just surrendering the mind and allowing themselves to be uncomfortable, allowing just the parts of your identity to fall away even when it doesn't feel good. Right now, the biggest thing I'm seeing are spiritual people living from the mind and not the heart. They know how to intellectualize emotions so well where they can easily convince themselves that they've done the work, that they are healed, that they are embodied, that they, are enlightened. And it is just so much further from the truth. And what's scary is a lot of these people are the ones who have the biggest platforms. When you filter spirituality through the mind, you are only creating a new matrix itself. It's a matrix that I call the phantom matrix. And that is exactly what is happening right now in spirituality and new wave spirituality. It's all being created through the mind and not the heart. For those who are really here for true ascension, true alignment, and true sovereignty, we have to up our game with discernment. We have to constantly be a pillar of truth so that we can see through the facade of that spirituality has become, because so many of these people still don't want to do the work. They still don't want to feel uncomfortable in their bodies, so they leave. They leave their body. They leave to go to the next retreat. They leave to go to the next ceremony. They leave to go to the next festival or ecstatic dance. They're waiting. They're just chasing that next high. They are avoiding their own discomfort, what their own heart is telling them. So many people I see are chasing their soul family. They are chasing the highs, the biggest parties, being around the people with the most followers, the most influencers, and they are chasing all the shiny spiritual things outside of themselves without looking within, without actually sitting in their own discomfort, sitting in the void, sitting with their own heart, with their own body. What is their nervous system actually telling them? I think the biggest problem right now is what people are calling growth is just easily a more refined version of the same patterns. And that's what I'm seeing. That is what I'm seeing on social media, in the collective, in spiritual communities. And there's not real work being done because they don't want to look. They don't want to
Bryce,
feel.
thank you for the heart me and the go
Why would
popular.
you
I
want
just
to
noticed
feel
that
when
it
there's
doesn't
so
give me an
many
alert for some reason.
pretty
Thank you
fun
so much.
things outside of you, like drugs? Most of them are going to be afraid of this spiritual identity collapse. And instead of seeing that collapse as a part of the spiritual process, they're going to resist it. They're going to avoid it. They are going to just rebuild kind of the same identity in just a slightly more evolved way. And I'm not saying this from a place of judgment. This is just coming from my own experience and things that I've seen in other people and things I've dealt with myself when I didn't want to let go of certain spiritual identities. But the truth is, real ascension is about shedding identities, and it's about continuously dying every single day. And that is what I have learned on my journey, is to wake up in curiosity, to not know who you are. And because I've gotten so comfortable with that, I am able to live a more fulfilling life as the creator of my own reality. I no longer wake up and go, oh, I'm a healer. Time to save the world. I don't do that. I don't do that anymore. I don't care if the world gets saved. Like that's where I'm at. And that has taken years of sitting with myself to finally get to this point where I no longer attach to my purpose, to my mission, to my label, to my spiritual identity. And even when you think you have landed and you're enlightened and you're like, I'm fully healed and this is me now, think again. think again. Trust me, think again. So it's just about how deeply you are willing to let things change within yourself and with your outside world. It's about being honest. It's about being willing to sit in the discomfort and sit in that void, that unknowing of who you are. And it's just about allowing all parts of your identity to fall away, even when it doesn't feel good, even the spiritual ones. So letting go of who you were in a past life, letting go of all the labels and fluffy names that people give themselves. It's just time to let it go. You know, it's time to let these identities, these boxes go, to break free from all of them so that you can truly be liberated and truly become more whole with who you really are, with the multidimensional aspects of who you really are. Once you are able to wake up every day not knowing who you are, not knowing what you're about to create, not knowing who you're going to become, you hold all the power in the world. And that's what I practice every single day. So these are just some topics I'm going to be talking about over the next few months. I think they're really important. I think it's important to talk about what's happening with spirituality, with new wave spirituality, where people are lacking accountability, avoiding their own truth, where they are chasing the glittery, shiny, spiritual aesthetic outside of them without actually embodying or going deeper within themselves. And yeah, so with that, I just want to leave you with this. You know, where are you avoiding discomfort? What are you calling alignment, but is actually fear? And the final question, what identity of yours is asking to be dissolved? And I know that's a really hard question for everybody. That's a hard question for me, but I do it every day. I do that work every single day. And it doesn't mean the identity is going to dissolve right away, but having awareness over your identities, you have power over your identities, and you are able to shift and maneuver, and you are able to call in more of who you really are. And that is what's going to get you back to your truth. Thank you so much for hanging on and joining me on my first podcast. It will be evolving over time, looking different, feeling different as I just continue to get my flow. But I am super excited to start this journey because I just have so much to share. And yeah, so thank you for being here. I also make a ton of content on Instagram, TikTok, or if you are looking for any other type of support, I also offer one-on-one coaching and remote multidimensional energy sessions. So you can book with me at terrafromearth.com. I will see you next time.
The Joe Rogan situation is actually getting worse faster than even experts thought. These reckless Ben 200K Lego scandal updates really expose what's going to happen next from here. A UK teen who died from a stab wound while handcuffed has sparked mass outrage, and everything you've seen around Spencer Pratt is just going to get crazier from here. We're talking about all of that and even more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, so buckle up, hit that like button, and let's just jump into it, starting with this. While the United States was at the peak of its largest measles outbreak in decades, Joe Rogan was actively driving people to dangerous and unproven treatments. And that's not me shit talking or speculating. That is literally the findings of a newly released medical study by the JAMA Network. Right, last year, the US saw the most reported measles cases, outbreaks, affected states, and deaths since 1992. And that's kind of insane because until 1989, doctors routinely recommended a second dose of the measles vaccine for kids who were 4 to 6 years old, or about 3 years after the first dose. And so we're talking about levels that really haven't been seen ever since kids were given proper immunity to the disease. And since the outbreak last year, measles cases have still remained historically high. Or just by the end of May, the CDC reported a total of just under 2,000 cases, which is insane because that's just a few hundred lower than the under 2,300 for all of last year. And we're not even halfway through the year. At the current rate, 2026 could easily surpass 2025 if the current trends continue. And you've got experts left and right believing that the US is on track to lose its measles elimination status this fall. But then also you have this new JAMA study specifically focusing on the peak of last year's outbreak around February and March when transmission was the highest. And during the absolute height of the outbreak, there was an influx of prominent public figures that were pushing to take vitamin A or cod liver oil, which contains high levels of vitamin A, as a treatment for the measles. And before we even get into the Rogan clips, I want to be very clear here. There are no proven treatments for the measles. All you can do is manage the symptoms once you get it. But there's also a very simple way to prevent against the measles. And it might be crazy. It might shock you. But it's the measles vaccine. 1 dose is 93% effective against measles, and 2 doses are 97% effective. And CDC data shows that more than 90% of confirmed infections in both 2025 and 2026 cases were among people who were unvaccinated or whose vaccination status was unknown. And then you compare that to vitamin A, which is essentially an unproven treatment, at least in developing countries like the United States. Right? There are some very limited studies that show vitamin A can be an effective supportive measles therapy for children in lower income countries who are malnourished and have vitamin A deficiencies. But there's not actually much evidence that it's effective in higher income countries like the United States, where less than 1% of the population has a vitamin A deficiency. In fact, ingesting too much vitamin A can actually be toxic, right? And that's because of the way that our bodies store vitamin A. It accumulates in the liver and other tissues. And so in very serious cases, that toxicity can cause vomiting, muscle weakness, liver damage, and potentially even damage the bones and brain. But in late March of last year, at the height of the historic outbreak, you had Rogan spreading dangerous misinformation about vitamin A during an interview on his podcast with Dr. Suzanne Humphries, who's a well-known vaccine skeptic who wrote an incredibly controversial book called Dissolving Illusions that Rogan has repeatedly touted.
But the doctors should be recommending those things too. Like they're good too. Like vitamin D, super important. Vitamin A, super important. And one of the things that you talked about in the book is that I think this was really important when you were talking about the measles vaccine. You were saying that either if you get an infection with measles, just a natural infection, or if you get the vaccine, you're still going to get depleted of vitamin A. Like if you get vaccinated for the measles, you should be taking vitamin A as well. Your body's going to get depleted just by getting that shot. They don't tell you that.
And that episode, just on YouTube alone, reached 2.7 million people, so not including all the other places the podcast shows up or even the clips. And by no means was that the only time that he spread false information about measles to his millions of followers. Just a few weeks before, while discussing Humphries' book on another episode, he dramatically downplayed the severity of the disease while seemingly confusing it with chickenpox. And while he didn't talk about vitamin A during that episode, he did explicitly undermine the effectiveness of the measles vaccine, falsely claiming that people mostly stopped getting the disease because sanitation and nutrition improved.
They all had dropped off, and then the vaccines
measles
come along.
included. Speaking of the current thing,
which is
a controversy.
An infection that everyone got when I was a kid. And what happened was you'd get sick for a few days, and then you'd be immune for life.
Yep.
Yeah, and they were making it look like everyone's dying from measles. Like, no, if you're dying from measles, you're sick. You're already compromised, which is exactly what happened with COVID.
Right, and because I played that, I need to then quickly note that basically all of that is insanely wrong. So first of all, Rogan was born in 1967 when measles vaccines were already widely distributed, so it's just simply not true that everyone was getting measles when he was a kid. Measles also is not a minor infection. Up to 40% of people who get measles get other complications, and about 1 in 5 unvaccinated people in the United States who contract the disease have to be hospitalized. And so we had a lot of people, and even a community note on that clip, saying that Rogan seems to be confusing measles with the chickenpox, which is crazy, because that one is a much minor thing for kids and didn't have a vaccine when he was growing up. But also Rogan, I will say, is not the only high-profile figure that was spreading the misinformation during that time period, where you also had Snake Wrangler and Penis Cutter Off, or RFK Jr. in the mix. And a big thing is he had just been confirmed as the nation's top public health official, repeatedly pushing vitamin A and cod liver oil as a treatment for the measles, even as kids were dying. In early March of 2025, he wrote an op-ed for Fox News where he said that the CDC had updated their recommendation to support the administration of vitamin A to treat measles, and claiming that, quote, studies have found that vitamin A can dramatically reduce measles mortality. And this new JAMA study found that during the time that Rogan, RFK Jr., and these other public figures were pushing vitamin A, there was a dramatic increase in online searches for the terms vitamin A, measles.
On a bright May morning in 1953, the British psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond prepared a strange concoction in the kitchen of a Hollywood home. The drink was for Aldous Huxley, the prophetic novelist behind 1932's Brave New World. A couple months earlier, Huxley had read about the research trials Osmond was conducting with a naturally occurring hallucinogen called mescaline, and the drug piqued his curiosity. Huxley was interested in testing a theory he'd been developing that the human brain was a kind of reducing valve, protecting us from a more expansive experience that he called mind at large. He wrote a letter to Osmond, who was more than happy to let him be a guinea pig. So it came to pass that Aldous Huxley swallowed 0.4 of a gram of mescaline and sat down to wait for the results. For an hour or so, nothing much happened, just dancing lights and geometric patterns. Huxley was starting to get impatient. But then, all at once, he was gripped by a fiery panic. The scaffolding of ordinary perception began to dismantle, and he suddenly felt that this was all going too far. When he later described what seized him in that moment, Huxley turned to religious language. The fear, he wrote, is due to the incompatibility between man's egoism and the divine purity, between man's self-aggravated separateness and the infinity of God. For a few agonizing minutes, he teetered on the brink of madness, between the heaven of presence and the hell of distraction. But the last traces of ego finally released, and as he walked outside into the garden, he saw what Adam had seen on the morning of creation, the miracle, moment by moment, of naked existence. For the rest of the afternoon, Huxley was absorbed in a mystic vision. Time vanished into a perpetual present. Flowers pulsed with undecipherable mystery. And all throughout, he kept repeating, "This is how one ought to see." Eventually, the trip wore off, and Huxley returned to what he called that reassuring but profoundly unsatisfactory state known as being in one's right mind. But the trip made an indelible impression, and Huxley would spend the rest of his life trying to make sense of its implications. When he documented his experience in 1954's The Doors of Perception, Huxley concluded that the urge to transcend self-consciousness was a principal appetite of the soul. He came to believe that the widespread availability of this experience through psychedelics would lead to a religious revolution in the culture.
This is the pharmacological revolution which has taken place, that we have now powerful mind-changing drugs which, physiologically speaking, are almost costless.
On the eve of the 1960s, he made a prophecy that psychedelics would transform religion from an activity mainly concerned with symbols into an everyday mysticism underlying ordinary life. 70 years later, that outbreak of everyday mysticism still eludes us, and in many ways, the world more closely resembles Huxley's Brave New World than any utopia. But thanks to groundbreaking new research, we're finally beginning to understand what he experienced that day, and what a true culture of self-transcendence might mean. This film will attempt to explain that research, and what it implies for the history and future of psychedelics. We'll begin the journey by describing a cutting-edge theory that's revolutionizing our understanding of the brain. We'll go on to explore how that theory sheds light on the problems of the ego, and how traditional cultures alleviated those problems through various techniques of altering consciousness. Next, we'll explain the attempt to recapture those methods with the rediscovery of psychedelics in the 1960s, and see what neuroscience can tell us about the politics of the psychedelic experience. Finally, we'll discuss the recent rebirth of psychedelic research, and see how meditation can help us carry the freedom of the psychedelic experience into ordinary life and death. Huxley's book drew its title from a line by the poet William Blake, that if the doors of perception were cleansed, then everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. And throughout his account, he returns to the experience of a finite mind threatening to dissolve in the face of infinity. To understand how psychedelics have this dramatic effect on our sense of self and world, we have to go back to the beginning, to understand how selves and their worlds come into being. Our story begins not with a creator god or a paradisal garden, but with entropy, chaos, the fact that things fall apart. The concept of entropy comes out of physics, and it measures how much disorder or unpredictability there is in a system. One way of describing it is that entropy measures how improbable it is that a molecule can be found in a particular region. The entropy of an ice cube, for example, is low, because the molecules are tightly packed. The entropy of a liquid is higher, and the entropy of a gas higher still, because the molecules are more and more randomly dispersed. The greater the entropy, the more unpredictable the system. According to the second law of thermodynamics, entropy in a closed system always increases over time. Indeed, it's why the arrow of time only flows in one direction. It's why ash doesn't become wood, eggs don't unscramble, and a drop of ink placed in water tends to disperse.
If, however, I placed a drop of ink in some water, and then, to your amazement, you saw it gather itself up, and then relax a bit, and gather itself up again, like it was breathing, as if time was reversed, you would say, there's something very peculiar about that drop of ink. It's almost as if it was living.
This is Carl Friston, the most cited neuroscientist in the world, and the most notoriously difficult to understand. Friston's work sheds light on the mystery of how living systems self-organize and avert the second law, how order emerges from chaos. His claim to fame is something called the free energy principle, a general mathematical rule that all living systems, from cells to societies, have to obey. This rule is what holds us together in the face of the infinite, and it provides the key to understanding how psychedelics work in the brain.
If you think about the first duty of a brain, why do we have brains? Why does any organism have a brain? It's not to write poetry or to do neuroscience. It's to keep the body alive.
For a system to be alive, it first has to be a thing, for there to be some kind of boundary between that system and its environment. What distinguishes living systems is that they actively work to maintain this boundary over time. They harvest energy and information from their environments in order to resist dissipation by the second law and keep the entropy of their internal states to a minimum. In biological terms, this is known as homeostasis. Think about it like a collection of internal thermostats that measure and adjust the various dials of bodily regulation.
If you want to maintain the physiology of the body within certain states that are compatible with survival, like our heart rate, can't go too far up, it can't go too far down, it has to vary within limits, our blood pressure the same. A good way to do that is to have a kind of predictive model of the body from the inside.
Just like a thermostat, homeostasis works by having a preferred state, then measuring deviations from that state and acting to return to the preferred range. One of the key insights behind the free energy principle is that you can think of these preferences as expectations, because they represent evolution's best guesses about what it takes to survive within a niche. In this sense, you might say that a fish has gills because it expects to find itself in water. Thinking about it this way allowed Friston to write down a simple equation that describes the imperative driving all living systems.
It turns out that there's a very general way to think about systems that do this, especially in biology, which is that they minimize surprise. Not just like psychological surprise, like, oh, I'm surprised that the bus was early today or something like that, but no, surprise in a very deeply mathematical sense. Surprise in a mathematical information theory sense is unexpected data.
Remember that entropy indexes the unpredictability of a system. More specifically, the more entropy there is in a system, the greater the potential for surprise in each measurement of that system, the greater the possible gap between expectation and reality. The free energy principle says that if organisms sample their internal and external states and work to minimize how surprising those samples are, then over time they'll minimize entropy and continue to inhabit their expected states. The way humans implement this principle is called active inference, because surprise can be minimized in two ways, either by changing one's expectations to make them better fit the world, or by changing the world to make it better fit one's expectations.
This is a way of sort of inaugurating a self-fulfilling expectation of continuing to stay alive.
The brain's primary job, whether in action or perception, is managing entropy. And this allows us to see the deep roots of Huxley's reducing valve theory. If we didn't dramatically filter the reality we perceive, we'd quite literally fall apart.
Hi, Levi.
It's a
How are
trade-off.
you?
Adapt too little to the environment, and you can't anticipate it well enough to survive. Adapt too much, and there's no longer a boundary between you and the world. All living systems are engaged in this delicate balance between separation and connection, between hanging together and falling apart, between order and chaos.
The world of experience as it presents itself to us is literally and not metaphorically complex beyond our capacity to understand. And that means that people deal in a real sense on an ongoing basis with the infinite. And I believe that that fact is the reason why religious experience is essentially endemic to mankind. It's a human universal, and it's not because people believe. It's because human existence as such consists of a confrontation between the finite and the infinite, and religious systems merely take that into account.
So we started to learn something about the basic existential situation that Huxley's trip brought him in touch with. But you still might be wondering what all this biology has to do with the psychedelic experience. Well, the themes of order, chaos, and the balance between them will take us much further than you might imagine. It turns out that the free energy principle lines up with one of our deepest theories about how the brain generates conscious experience, and how psychedelics can transform it.
Our perception of the world seems so natural, we just take it for granted. You wake up in the morning, you open your eyes, and a world just appears.
For most of us, most of the time, perception feels passive, as though the world simply flowed into our minds through the windows of our eyes. Based on this intuition, we might assume that the brain works something like this. A sensory stimulus arrives, travels up through a few layers of processing, and gets spit out at the end as the world we perceive. But there are problems with this view. For one thing, the data we get from our senses are far too sparse to account for the vivid world we experience. For another, we're subject to all sorts of strange illusions, suggesting that our minds play a much more active role in perception.
What color do you see?
This is very obviously white and gold.
I don't get the gold and white. I don't get the blue and black. When you can't believe your eyes, what can you believe?
Motivated by examples like this, neuroscientists have long thought about perception as a kind of inference, a statistical best guess based on the data we perceive.
Starting with this idea that the brain is locked inside this bony vault of the skull, trying to figure out what's out there in the world. Really what it's trying to do is infer the most likely cause of these sensory signals, given what they are, and given its prior expectations or beliefs about what's going on. This is a classic expression of what in mathematics is called Bayesian inference.
The mathematically optimal way to do this kind of inference comes from the Reverend Thomas Bayes, a 16th century statistician and philosopher. Bayes discovered a simple formula to describe how to update our beliefs, or priors.
I'm gonna go start cooking some food.
The idea of Bayes' theorem is it's a way of taking what you know now and updating it to what you should believe next, given some new data.
Neuroscientists have developed this into something called the Bayesian brain hypothesis, the idea that the brain uses something like Bayes' theorem to update its beliefs based on sensory evidence. There's just one problem. Calculating Bayes' theorem exactly would require us to consider every possible cause of every sensation. We'd be paralyzed by even the smallest update. Here, again, we encounter the limits of our finitude.
The fact of our finitude is, again, no academic issue. It's central to the nature of our being, and we're forced to deal with it on an ongoing basis.
To solve this problem, evolution devised an ingenious workaround that allows us to approximate Bayesian inference in a much more efficient way. Here's how it works. Instead of starting with the data of our senses and building to a guess about what's out there in the world, we actually start with a prediction of what's out there and a model of what we would perceive if that prediction were correct.
So that's called the generative model. It's a kind of a simulation of what I would be seeing if it were in fact my best guess.
These are called top-down predictions because they come from the inside out rather than the outside in.
We don't passively perceive our worlds, we actively generate them.
At each level of the perceptual hierarchy, we compare these top-down predictions with the sensory data coming from the bottom up. Then the discrepancy or error signal is used to update subsequent predictions. After the first layer, only the error signal gets passed up the chain, allowing the brain to save precious energetic resources.
The fundamental idea is that you can approximate Bayesian inference by the brain continually generating predictions about the causes of the information that it gets, and then using sensory data to update these predictions. The sensory data here is treated as a prediction error. It's the difference between what the brain expects and what it gets.
This theory is called predictive processing, and it's gaining increasing currency in neuroscience. But the strange implication of this view is that the ordinary world we perceive is far closer to a psychedelic experience than we tend to imagine.
What I am perceiving is in fact my internal simulation, my internal model, but constrained so that it is as close as possible to the few bits of sensory data that I actually get.
The term I like to use for this is that perception is a kind of controlled hallucination.
If this picture of minimizing the gap between expectation and reality sounds familiar, it's because it is. The math behind predictive processing turns out to be exactly the same as the free energy principle, indicating a deep continuity between life and mind. Just as the integrity of our bodies depends on minimizing surprise through homeostasis, the integrity of our minds depends on minimizing prediction error. Consciousness, like life, inhabits a middle ground between order and chaos. This is exactly the thesis behind a seminal paper by Robin Carhart-Harris, a leading figure in the field of psychedelic neuroscience. Inspired by the free energy principle, Carhart-Harris argues that different states of consciousness can be placed on a spectrum based on the richness or entropy of spontaneous brain signals.
And then the entropic brain hypothesis says that that richness will couple to, it will be correlated with the richness of content of conscious experience.
Another inspiration for the paper was the psychedelic experience, and in particular the idea that psychedelics might loosen the reducing valve associated with ordinary waking consciousness. Carhart-Harris and his colleagues predicted that the vastness and intensity of a psychedelic trip would correlate with the entropy of the brain state.
Both the content of conscious experience will become richer, more dynamic and bigger, more capacious, more stuff. And the activity, the spontaneous brain activity, will move in a way that's related to that. So it will go up, the entropy will go up.
And this is exactly what they found, across a wide variety of psychedelics. It's possible to place other states on the spectrum as well. Deep sleep and sedative drugs actually represent an excess of top-down order. And just as with life, move too far in either direction, and consciousness disappears. In the middle of the spectrum is something known as the critical point, at which the system is optimally poised between order and chaos. And it's here, as the system teeters on the brink of dissolution, that entirely new levels of complexity begin to emerge.
Criticality refers to certain properties that you'll see in certain complex systems when they inhabit what we call a critical point or critical zone.
Criticality isn't unique to brains. You see it throughout the natural world during phase transitions. Think of a sand pile in the midst of an avalanche, or water as it transitions from liquid to gas. In these moments, systems balance the dynamism of a chaotic system with the robustness of an orderly one. And this allows them to be maximally sensitive to perturbations while remaining stable overall. To see what this might mean in the brain, imagine a few different ways you might react to a piece of music. In the first, you hear a note and it falls flat. No memories, no emotions. This is what might happen if the neural signal fizzled out prematurely, before it can spread to other areas of the brain. Now imagine that you hear the note and are immediately hurled into an ecstatic vision, culminating with an epileptic seizure. This is what would happen if the signal propagated chaotically, with each brain area wired up to every other. Finally, imagine that you hear the note and it triggers a memory from childhood, filling you with longing and nostalgia. Soon, a creative impulse strikes, and you rush to compose a melody of your own. This is what might happen with the optimal wiring of a brain operating at criticality. As one scientist put it, near the critical point, information flows easily, computations are most facile, and the brain is exquisitely sensitive to inputs. Around the critical point, there is a narrow passage that opens to an expanse of complexity and emergence that is wider than the sky and deeper than the sea. The secret to such efficient information processing is what's called scale-free or fractal organization. This means that the same structure of a single hub node connected to multiple disparate nodes repeats itself at multiple hierarchical scales.
Like a simple algorithm that applies here at this really bitty scale, and jump up order of magnitude, and it's the same rule, and jump up an order of magnitude. You can see the same pattern because it's the same rule.
Near the top of the hierarchy are regions like the default mode network, which encode deep priors like the ego or sense of self. Scale-free organization allows such regions to integrate information from across the brain, keeping the ego flexible and adaptive long-term. As we'll see a bit later, visiting critical states may be necessary for healthy hierarchy more generally, in the brain and beyond. But it turns out that the ordinary waking consciousness of modern humans is slightly subcritical, slightly biased toward excessive order. And to understand why, we have to see how the modern ego first evolved. In addition to the free energy principle, Carhart-Harris also draws on older, less fashionable ideas to explain the psychedelic experience, in particular the depth psychology of Sigmund Freud. At the turn of the 20th century, Freud was attempting to explain the peculiar neuroses that afflicted modern people. In 1929's Civilization and Its Discontents, he argued that the modern ego was increasingly struggling to reconcile the instinctive impulses of the id with the pressures of societal expectation, represented by the superego. The greater the mismatch between cultural values and natural impulses, the more the individual was forced to repress into the unconscious. In the dreams and psychotic visions of his patients, Freud believed he was seeing the manifestations of the repressed unconscious, and he noticed a parallel between these states and the thinking of children and archaic humans. He came to believe that ego consciousness must have been a secondary process that developed atop a more fundamental mode of being that he called the primary process. Carhart Harris believes he was onto something.
Primary consciousness in Freudian metapsychology was the quality of consciousness of like prototypical humans. And that's a fascinating thought, like at what point in our evolution did we inflect into ego consciousness? It's not a gradual continuous thing, it seems, but a very rapid thing that happened.
Carhart Harris believes that the ego has its origins in the expansion of the neocortex that came with human evolution. This change brought with it a massive increase in entropy, that is, in the repertoire of possible states the brain could inhabit. The fantastical, imaginative cognition we see in children and early humans represents our earliest attempt to make use of this new brain power.
The basic idea would be that the brain, and in the case of human beings, a strange brain, an inflated brain, is modeling an inflated amount of the world.
But more possibility also meant more risk of detachment from reality. So at some point in our history, ego consciousness developed to constrain this newfound entropy, to bring our inflated capacities under control.
Many people have speculated that it was something about controlling our food sources through agriculture, the so-called agricultural revolution. And so that's interesting to think on an anthropological level, that it was control that changed us in that direction. And then, what a crazy controlling species we've become.
Despite the increased power it gave us, ego consciousness was a mixed blessing. It brought with it the knowledge of mortality, the shame of social judgment, and the burden of planning for the future. In Huxley's language, it's the source of the self-aggravated separateness that alienates us from the experience of the divine.
The story of Adam and Eve, as far as I can tell, is the story of the coming of self-consciousness to mankind. And there's a real cost to that. I mean, part of the cost is separation from the pure and unadulterated flow of animal life, and I believe that people suffer from that absence of flow continually.
While we don't know for certain when this fall into ego consciousness occurred, Carhart Harris believes that its consequences can be seen in the functions of the default mode network. This network has been correlated with rumination, mind-wandering, and the maintenance of the narrative self. Importantly, activity in the DMN also dramatically decreases on psychedelics. In the throes of the psychedelic experience, as the ego dissolves and reconstitutes itself, one can relive the anguish of its initial development.
And there's no doubt that many religious ideas in some way relate to this domain of experience. For instance, one could say that to recoil from the beatific vision is to be cast into hell. Alternately, one could say that one gets forced out of the Garden of Eden, and then one is left wandering this desiccated world of egoity, filled with fear and craving and confusion.
But it turns out that the human brain comes equipped with a system for dealing with the pathologies of the ego, a kind of psychological escape hatch that allows us to return to the earlier, more flexible mode of consciousness. And it's exactly this system on which the classic psychedelics operate.
So we know that psychedelics hijack a certain neuromodulatory system in the brain, the serotonin system, and there's a particular aspect of the serotonin system that does have high expression in what I call recent or new brain. So this is brain that is disproportionately expanded in our species.
Drugs like LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, and DMT all work on something called the 5-HT2A receptor system, a network of receptors in the brain that interact with the neurotransmitter serotonin. This system is especially prevalent in the neocortex, the very region that ego consciousness developed to constrain. It usually comes online under conditions of prolonged stress or deprivation. Think of a hunter who hasn't eaten in days, or an office worker on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And its purpose is to bring about dramatic transformation in the moments when we most need it.
Adversity, maybe even life-threatening adversity, can turn on, if you want, adaptability or plasticity, the ability to change. And that makes logical sense. If one's life is in danger, then you might say something has to give.
Activating this system can induce what Carhart Harris calls pivotal mental states, periods of radical plasticity in which our most fundamental assumptions are up for grabs. In the best case, these states can lead to spiritual epiphanies. In the worst, they spiral into psychosis. But throughout our history, humans have learned to harness these states to bring about transformation voluntarily, before disaster strikes. Fasting, extreme temperatures, and of course psychedelics have all been leveraged in a wide array of cultures for profound healing and transformation. Even the ancient Greeks, famous for their skepticism and rationality, understood the importance of these kinds of states. A famous example is the so-called Mysteries of Eleusis, a long-standing fertility ritual at the heart of Greek culture. The specifics of the ritual were kept secret on pain of death, but we know that it reenacted the myth of the abduction of Persephone, daughter of Demeter, goddess of agriculture, by Hades, king of the underworld. And according to Brian Murarescu, author of The Immortality Key, the drink at the center of the mysteries may have contained ergot, a psychedelic fungus similar to LSD. For the Greeks, using ergot-infected grain in their sacrament may have symbolized the harmony of the wild and the cultivated, of nature and culture, chaos and order. After drinking the potion, initiates would be led through a rite with 3 phases, retracing Demeter's journey to the underworld to retrieve her daughter. The descent, which began as the ego-dissolving effects of the wine kicked in. The search, which culminated in a confrontation with the goddess and the revelation of divine secrets. And the ascent, symbolizing the reunion of Demeter with Persephone and the return of a bountiful spring. The function of the ritual, according to one scholar, was to confer immortality upon the initiates, and to elevate man from the human sphere to the divine. By undergoing a psychic death and rebirth, the initiates at Eleusis not only brought themselves back into harmony with the cycles of nature, but freed themselves to lead happier, more carefree lives. But after 1,000 years, the mysteries were eventually threatened by the rise of the Christianized Roman Empire.
There were different attempts to wipe it off the map, and in 364, the Emperor Valentinian, he essentially outlaws all nocturnal celebrations because these things are always at night.
In a last-ditch attempt to save the mysteries, a Roman prefect attempted to warn the emperor about the cost of losing this sacred experience.
And this guy Praetextatus is recorded as saying, Valentinian, please don't shut this down. I'm an initiate. I've been to Eleusis. I've drunk the potion. I've seen the goddess. Please do not eliminate this. Eleusis is the one thing that holds the entire human race together, he said. He said, if you get rid of Eleusis, life for us will become abiotos, which in Greek means unlivable. It wasn't just about Greek existence, it was about human existence. There was something happening at Eleusis with that potion, with this beatific vision that literally held civilization together like glue for the ancient Greeks. And democracy, the arts, the sciences, everything else was an offshoot of that experience. Eleusis was the foundation.
But ban them they did, and Western religion and culture would develop with a stable, separate ego, very much intact. Mainstream Christianity would maintain a sharp division between creator and creation. Enlightenment rationalism would prop up a Cartesian distinction between subject and object. Science and technological modernity were in many ways a triumph of the rational ego. But these same forces would eventually bring us to the brink of destruction. By the time Freud was writing in the early 20th century, you might say something had to give. And, as if on cue, psychedelics returned to the scene. On April 19, 1943, a decade before Huxley's fateful mescaline trip, a Swiss chemist named Albert Hofmann became the first person to trip on LSD. Hofmann had actually synthesized the compound 5 years earlier while researching ergot for Sandoz Laboratories. But he'd shelved the drug after failing to find anything of interest. It was only what he'd later describe as a peculiar presentiment that induced him to give LSD-25 another try. He decided to ingest what he thought was a conservative dose of 250 micrograms, and as the drug worked its way into his system, he set off on a bike ride home. What happened next will by now be familiar, though it certainly wasn't to Hofmann. The world around him grew menacing, time was distorted, and he feared that he might go insane. But the terror eventually gave way to gratitude and satisfaction, which persisted into the following day. After Hofmann persuaded his incredulous colleagues about his experience, the first wave of psychedelic research soon began. Among the earliest investigators was Humphrey Osmond, who began studying the effects of LSD and mescaline in the early 1950s. Osmond would even trip-sit a British MP on the BBC in 1955.
I'm feeling perfectly fit at the moment, and as sane as I ever am, and I'll take the drug now.
Though the footage was eventually deemed too controversial to air. And it was Osmond, in the 1956 letter to Huxley, who first coined the term psychedelic. Meanwhile, others were investigating outside the laboratory. In 1955, an ethnomycologist named R. Gordon Wasson traveled to Mexico to study the religious use of the psychoactive psilocybe mushroom. There, he became the first Westerner to participate in a Mazatec mushroom ritual with the shaman Maria Sabina. The trip was documented in a Life magazine photo essay, the popularity of which sent a swarm of seekers to South America in search of the psychedelic experience. One of those seekers was a Harvard psychologist named Timothy Leary, who first tried the mushroom on a trip to Cuernavaca in 1960.
I learned more about my brain and its possibilities. I learned more about psychology in the 5 hours after taking these mushrooms than I had in the preceding 15 years of studying doing research in psychology.
When he returned to Harvard, he initiated a research program known as the Harvard Psilocybin Project, along with a colleague named Richard Alpert. The group conducted a number of pioneering studies, but soon came under scrutiny for their unorthodox methods, including giving psychedelics to undergraduates. Alpert and Leary were both fired in 1963. But by that point, psychedelics were already taking root as a cultural phenomenon. For the budding counterculture, psychedelics appeared to remedy all of the afflictions of the post-war American mind. Where the dominant culture offered conformity, alienation, and disenchantment, psychedelics shattered conventions, melted boundaries, and provided a shortcut to spiritual experience. In short, they offered an escape from the perennial burden of an overbearing ego. The explosion of psychedelics also coincided with an influx of Eastern religious ideas into the West, unsettling more than 1,500 years of Christian hegemony. Many looked to Eastern claims about the illusoriness of the self in order to explain and integrate their psychedelic experiences.
This experience could have happened to you, that you no longer feel yourself and what you are experiencing to be separated.
The Beatles even briefly renounced psychedelics to travel to India and study transcendental meditation. Richard Alpert changed his name to Ram Dass and became a disciple of the guru named Karoli Baba. But Leary stayed in America and took a different approach. For him, the implications of the psychedelic experience were not just spiritual but political, and he came to believe that the social order itself was an obstacle to spiritual experience. The only solution was...
Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Don't politic, don't vote. These are old men's games. Impotent and senile old men that want to put you onto their old chess games of war and power. Drop out. Get back in tune with God's harmony. Surround yourself with beauty and sacred objects. You can't get caught in the conforming, rote lockstep, which we call American society.
Leary was embraced by the counterculture and became increasingly threatening and hostile to the establishment. He even joked that LSD might stand for let the state dissolve. From the point of view of contemporary neuroscience, Leary's quip was actually more apt than it might initially seem. If you think of the functional organization of the brain as a kind of internal government, then the effect of psychedelics could be compared to a kind of anarchy, collapsing hierarchies and liberating repressed information. Robin Carhart Harris explores this analogy explicitly in a paper titled Rebus and the Anarchic Brain.
The so-called Rebus model, which is relaxed beliefs under psychedelics.
The paper focuses on something called precision weighting, a parameter in the predictive processing model that determines which signals get more priority in the meeting of top-down and bottom-up information. You can think of it like certainty or confidence. The more confidence you have in a prior, the more resistant it is to updating. Conversely, the more confidence you have in sensory information, the more power it has to update high-level priors.
The idea with Rebus is that under psychedelics, the precision weighting of our internal models, these two things in a handshake, models, assumptions, beliefs, hypotheses versus data, the precision of the models will dial down.
According to the Rebus theory, psychedelics work by relaxing the precision or confidence in high-level prior beliefs. This liberates bottom-up information flow, allowing us to perceive the world and our own minds more freshly.
We can go around the world without our usual preconceptions. For example, if we're a depressed person, one of our top-level priors might be, I'm a useless person and everything always goes wrong. And when that prior is quietened under psychedelics, you might go around and see, wow, the world's a kind of a pretty amazing place.
The Rebus model helped explain why psychedelics are so susceptible to set and setting.
Where are you? Oh, stop that, man. Stop that.
The less confidence we have in our priors, the more vulnerable we are to influence. But it also helps explain the apparent politics of the psychedelic experience. Remember that operating near criticality allows the brain to develop scale-free hierarchies, which balance sensitivity and robustness. Politically, you could think of the ego in such a brain as a wise old king who upholds order while remaining responsive to various constituencies. Over time, as the precision of internal models grows, this king can become a tyrant, more concerned with the maintenance of his own rule than with the health of the kingdom. Psychedelics are like the proverbial flood, dethroning the king, flattening the hierarchy, and washing away the old order. That's why the paper's called Rebus and the Anarchic Brain. Of course, mind and culture reflect each other. Cultures, too, have priors. An overly rigid culture will create repression in the individual psyche. It therefore shouldn't be surprising that internal anarchy spills over into society.
The problem with the psychedelics is that they dissolve cultural programming and hence inherently have a political charge about them. A psychedelic drug is a perturbation of the mind, and the perturbed mind is a mind in the act of rediscovering the nature that lies outside of culture. So this tension between cultural values and what we might call, for want of a better word, reality, creates a tension between institutions and the users of these substances.
By 1969, roughly 2 million Americans had taken LSD, and this culture-wide cleansing of the doors of perception undoubtedly promoted both social and spiritual transformation. But as the decade wore on, the frantic pursuit of ego dissolution began to reveal its downsides. Ego consciousness may limit, but it also protects. It's another kind of reducing valve. And plunging into chaos only helps if one then reemerges, hopefully in an improved condition. It didn't help matters that by the early 1960s, the West hadn't had a mainstream psychedelic tradition for more than 1,500 years, and attempts to import ideas from the East were fraught with misinterpretations. Timothy Leary's The Psychedelic Experience, for example, reimagined the Tibetan Book of the Dead as a manual for tripping, but many read these Buddhist teachings on freedom from the ego as a call to destroy it.
See, I got a message on acid that you destroy your ego, and I did, you know. I was reading that stupid book of Leary's and all that shit, you know, we're going through a whole game that everybody went through, and I destroyed myself, you know.
Carelessly bypassing defenses, whether societal or psychological, is bound to lead to a backlash. And indeed, by the mid-1960s, the US government had soured on psychedelic research. In May of 1966, Senate hearings were held on the so-called LSD problem, where Leary and other proponents attempted to stem the tide.
The use of psychedelic drugs such as marijuana, mescaline, LSD is out of control in the United States today. Now, I am not alarmed by this situation per se. There are many sources of energy in the United States today which are out of control.
Research has already verified the appearance of religious or transcendental, if we wish to use that word, or serious, blissful experience through psychedelics, and government officials would be wise to take this factor into account and to treat LSD use with proper humanity and respect.
But it was too late. By October of that year, the FDA had ordered a stop to most of the psychedelic research in the country, and in 1968, LSD was banned nationwide. With the rise of the war on drugs in the 1970s, psychedelics became a scapegoat for the increasing disorder of the culture, and for nearly 4 decades, most psychedelic research was driven underground or out of existence. But then, in 2006, the year of Albert Hoffman's 100th birthday, the tide started to turn.
So for the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I'm so excited about some research that we've been doing on psilocybin and the experimental mystical experience.
It began with a landmark paper from a psychopharmacologist named Roland Griffiths. Griffiths and his colleagues found that a single dose of psilocybin could produce some of the most meaningful experiences of people's lives.
The study says at 2 months, the volunteers rated the experience as having spiritual significance and sustained positive changes in behavior.
Griffiths developed an interest in psychedelic research through his own profound experiences in meditation, but his eminent sobriety and impeccable credentials helped to restore the field's scientific legitimacy. And since that initial study, psychedelic research has experienced a dramatic rebirth.
Some psychiatrists and researchers are giving psychedelic drugs a second look.
The medical world is taking note of this.
This drug, going back to ancient times, may help treat the mental diseases of our times.
One of the most surprising findings of this new wave of psychedelic research is that unlike most psychiatric medications, psychedelics appear to be effective across a wide variety of mental illnesses. Depression, anxiety, addiction, and OCD have all shown susceptibility to psychedelic treatment. One way of understanding this is through the entropic brain hypothesis. Many different mental illnesses can be thought of as ailments of excessive order. Instead of adversity loosening our beliefs, it leads us to cling to them defensively.
Stuff happens, and we're hurt by it, we're injured and we're suffering, but we can find a place, we can do something that steadies us.
In recent work, Robin Carhart Harris has expanded on this idea, proposing a construct called canalization as a general factor of psychopathology. The idea is that the brain can be modeled as a kind of landscape, and learning as the tracing of grooves within that landscape. The steepness and depth of the grooves corresponds to precision weighting, the confidence we have in particular strategies or beliefs. Over time, as we repeat these patterns, the grooves become deeper and easier for the brain to repeat. But trauma can also cause these grooves to deepen defensively, making them difficult and frightening to escape, even after they've outlived their utility.
In psychopathology, that could take many forms. It could be falling into a depression, a kind of hibernation from the scary, uncertain world. In eating disorder, we're starting to control our caloric intake because at least we can control something.
The effect of psychedelics has been compared to a fresh snowfall, flattening the landscape and allowing new pathways to be laid down. Understanding psychopathology in this way has also started to shed light on the positive end of the spectrum. In a paper titled The Predictive Dynamics of Happiness and Well-Being, philosopher Mark Miller argues that the goodness or badness of our emotions depends on the rate at which we're reducing prediction errors. Paradoxically, happiness isn't about driving error to zero, but about confronting the unknown voluntarily and finding new errors to predict away.
Pathology is about installing suboptimal beliefs that somehow get insulated because of these nasty feedback cycles. And so what's going to be central to our long-term well-being are all those skills and abilities and ways that we have of locating those suboptimal belief packets and then challenging them in ways that they start updating again, that they become updatable rather than embedding themselves and becoming stickier. We want to find ways of making them more fluid.
In the paper, Miller describes this as a willingness to remain near the edge of criticality between order and disorder, between what is well-known and reliable and the unknown and potentially more optimal. In other words, a willingness to continually die and be reborn in ways both large and small.
That's the meta story, right? Order, chaos, order. But it's partial order, chaos, reconstituted and revivified order. What's the ultimate in order? Doing this. Willingness to do that. That's the ultimate order. It's to let these things go as they need to go. That's a sacrifice. And to allow this continual process of transformation to occur.
Continually riding the edge of criticality is easier said than done, especially if one is identified with the ego that might need to be sacrificed.
There's definitely a motif of sacrifice here and dismemberment. It's like you are the lucky human sacrifice. And there definitely is a fear of death or madness to overcome here, because resistance is just futile and very painful.
And yet, if the mysteries of Eleusis are any guide, there's a deeper possibility, one that provides consolation even in dying, when entropy inevitably overwhelms us.
If the ancients were known for anything, it was running to death. In fact, dying before dying, which is the immortality key, by the way. It's not psychedelics. When I refer to this key, I'm referring to this notion that's preserved in Greek. An pethanis, prin pethanis, denta pethanis, otan pethanis. If you die before you die, you won't die when you die. For some reason, the ancients prized that experience.
At the center of Roland Griffiths' research is the so-called mystical experience, as measured by something called the Mystical Experience Questionnaire.
So the core feature of these experiences is the sense of unity, an interconnectedness of all people, all things, the sense that all is one. Sometimes it's pure consciousness. And this is accompanied by a sense of sacredness or reverence, so humility before the majesty of something thought to be sacred.
Other features include the transcendence of time and space.
The past and the present collapse into the present moment. Space becomes endlessly vast.
Deeply felt positive mood.
Sometimes described as heart-opening or universal love, joy, peace, tranquility.
And the so-called noetic quality.
That the experience is more real, more true than everyday waking consciousness.
In the terms we've been using so far, the remarkable thing about the mystical experience is that it appears to transcend the oscillations of chaos and order.
Seeming opposites are reconciled in this state.
One doesn't just get reborn in a more hospitable condition, one discovers a dimension of awareness that, from its own perspective, is eternal.
If we stop conceiving of God as something exterior to us, but that the mystery of being itself is the mystery of your being and the mystery of my being, the way to identify with the divine is to peel back these layers and attempt to discover pure awareness.
In a 2016 psilocybin study on patients with a life-threatening cancer diagnosis, those who scored highest on the Mystical Experience Questionnaire showed the most significant reductions in their fear of death. Griffiths himself would eventually test this finding in the course of his own life.
10 months ago, I went in for a routine screening colonoscopy, believing myself to be very healthy. awakening from anesthesia with the news that I likely had a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. Now, ironically, the first psilocybin therapeutic study we conducted was treatment of depression and anxiety in patients who had a life-threatening cancer diagnosis. And I often wondered how I would deal with a similar situation. well, now I know.
After his diagnosis, Griffiths turned his attention more fully to the spiritual questions that first drew him into psychedelic research.
It has everything to do with this line of research that I started after meditation and then through psychedelics, and that is to really understand these core awakening experiences.
In a way, his vision was the same one that inspired Huxley, the possibility of an everyday mysticism compatible with ordinary life. The problem is that, as we learned in the 1960s, freedom can't just be a matter of sustaining a psychedelic state. And as seekers like Ram Dass discovered, psychedelics alone may not be enough.
The question is, can drugs be used as a vehicle to enlightenment? I don't think there is much doubt about it, that at least psychedelic chemicals, not all drugs, but psychedelic chemicals, have a capacity to cut through places where you are attached and clinging, to set them aside and show you a possibility. The problem is that they don't allow you to become the possibility, they only show you the possibility. And then after a few hours, you lose the view of the possibility and you have it only as a memory.
Psychedelic experiences can provide a genuine taste of the freedom beyond the confines of the ego. But that freedom is by its very nature fleeting, because it relies on dramatic changes to the contents of experience. When the trip ends, the ego reasserts itself, however improved it may seem to be.
The major Eastern idea is what is generally known as reincarnation, of going through life after life after life in an endless series, a process that is represented in this Japanese print of the Wheel of Life. The point that has to be remembered is that you can never stop anywhere. You may ascend to heaven, but what goes up must eventually come down. You may descend to hell, but what goes down must eventually come up. And so one goes on and on, moving through these various worlds until, in Buddhist ideas, you become sufficiently awakened to become a Buddha, one who is released from the wheel.
The way out of this cycle has been understood for millennia, not through science, but through introspection. And it begins by asking what remains when the self we thought we were dissolves.
One can ask the question, who or what is having this experience? Who or what is having this experience? And if one does that, instead of finding a usual conventional self, we can open up to the empty nature of awareness itself.
Awareness forms the ground of every experience, both ordinary and psychedelic. And it turns out that awareness, even an ordinary experience, is already free of the boundaries we'd otherwise seek to escape.
As you extricate yourself from these attachments, it's as if you are going into the space or the ground that lies behind the figures, which are thoughts, the thoughts being the definition of who I am and how the universe is, ego structure, models. You see models as merely models, and you start to rest in your awareness that lies behind the models. In that awareness, that spaciousness around the forms is the equanimity.
The intrinsic freedom of awareness is obscured by our habit of ceaseless identification with thought. And it's this habit that the practice of meditation can help one to break. By learning to recognize thoughts as mere appearances in consciousness, we can unravel the dream of a separate and isolated self.
You have become experience. You've transcended dualism, the separation between subject and object.
The key insight is that we don't need to identify with thoughts or emotions as they arise, but instead we can turn with great interest to investigate the present moment, and we can cultivate gratitude for the astonishing mystery in which we find ourselves.
Neither meditation nor psychedelics is a substitute for scientific inquiry, but both can help reveal in a visceral way what science increasingly suggests: the fact that the selves and worlds of our experience are controlled hallucinations, and can therefore be perceived in a radically different way.
When we become aware of the fact that we are constructing our experience, then the relationship with all the phenomena can start to change.
The less we conflate our constructions of reality with reality itself, the more willing we are to let go of them. And the easier it is to see through those constructions, to the freedom that lies behind them.
In meditation, you can have a no-self experience, and you can actually walk around in a no-self experience, and it can be a rather ordinary experience, ordinary consciousness. No fireworks, no distortions, or anything like that.
Meditation can allow one to access the freedom of the mystical experience in the very midst of ordinary awareness. Indeed, the mystical experience is this ordinary awareness. Our job is to wake up to this fact.
So where did I find myself after the diagnosis? Well, today, I am more awake, alive, and grateful than I've ever been before in my entire life.
My invitation to each of you here in this community and elsewhere
is for you to join me in this celebration.
Join me, let's join together in this celebration.
To stay awake to the sense of profound and precious interconnectedness.
Preciousness, the interconnectedness, we're all in this together.
We are all in this together, we really are.
The sense that there's something benevolent, meaningful, and purposeful
about it.
It feels to be so completely true.
Completely and authoritatively true. It's simply astonishingly beautiful. So join me. Thank you.
Sorry guys, one sec. I'm cooking. Fifi. Very true. Very wise. Shh. Hello. Hi, Kota. Hello. Sorry, I'm cooking. I was hungry. My phone died. I was also on a meeting.
Do you breathe the name of your savior in your hour of need and taste the blame if the flavor should remind you of greed, of implication, insinuation and ill will, till you cannot lie still in all this turmoil before red cape and foil come closing in for a kill. Come feed the rain, 'cause I'm thirsty for your love, dancing underneath the skies of lust. Yeah, feed the rain, 'cause without you love my life ain't nothing but this carnival of rust. It's all a game, avoiding failure when true colors will bleed. All in the name of misbehavior and the things we don't need. I lust for after, no disaster can touch us anymore. And more than ever, I hope to never fall where enough is not the same it was before. Come feed the rain, 'cause I'm thirsty for your love, dancing underneath the skies of lust. Yeah, feed the rain, 'cause without you love my life ain't nothing but this carnival of rust. Yeah, feed the rain, 'cause I'm thirsty for your love, dancing underneath the skies of lust. Yeah, feed the rain, 'cause without you love my life ain't nothing but this carnival of rust. Don't walk away, don't walk away. When the world is burning, don't walk away, don't walk away. When the heart is yearning, don't walk away, don't walk away. When the world is burning, don't walk away, don't walk away.
So the desert becomes a mirror of our base human instincts, creating kind of a cycle of disorientation, catharsis, and a temporary transformation that really won't go beyond this consciousness bubble. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tara from Earth. I love to explore consciousness. I love to decode the external world and to see how the world around us reflects who we are and how we can understand ourselves better. I also offer universal tools and energetic insights for those who are on a consciousness or ascension journey, supporting us all in navigating the new paradigm and reclaiming our power, sovereignty, and creator within. So if any of that sounds good to you, feel free to like and subscribe. I also post a lot on my Instagram, my TikTok, so you can follow me there. Okay, we need to talk about Burning Man. Burning Man is one of the most fascinating phenomena of our times, and of course it sparks a lot of strong opinions. Some people love it for its creativity, its radical self-expression, a sense of art and community, the idea that you can go out into the desert and be fully immersed by art, music, and human connection. But of course a lot of other people are very skeptical and critical of what's really going on. To many people it feels very false, it feels very dark. There's always something kind of unsettling about Burning Man. And a lot of spiritual observers see it as a really highly energetic space of rituals that people are participating in, that they are consenting to. So there's a lot of love, there's a lot of criticism, and especially over the last few years, there's been even more criticism. Burning Man is really mesmerizing, but it can also be a theater of consciousness, which I'm going to go a little bit into. And it is kind of its own temporary simulation of looping energy that participants aren't really aware of. So this video is all about decoding Burning Man and then for you to come up with your own conclusion on what you think. I think it's important to understand the energetics behind events like this so that we can move more consciously into the new paradigm. I get a little woo with it, I go a little nerdy, I go all out. Just hang on for the ride. I promise it's worth it. So Burning Man began in 1986 as kind of a spontaneous ritual on a beach in San Francisco. It was a symbolic burning of a wooden man to express individuality and creativity. And over decades, of course, it grew and grew and grew, becoming Black Rock City in the Nevada desert. It is managed by the Burning Man Project, and it kind of became a highly curated simulation that amplifies humans' desires and projections and identity performance. So it's this like little bubble that reflects its own collective consciousness, showing kind of both our desire for transformation and connection, sensuality, but also how we can easily get pulled into the illusion, and I will be talking about why. So Burning Man has really grown enormously in the past few decades. Tickets used to be like $10 to $15. The event was really small and experimentative, gathering just a lot of artists and free spirits. Over the years, the ticket prices gradually increased alongside the festival's size and commercialization, reaching hundreds and thousands of dollars of luxury camps, tech influencers, and high-profile, even celebrities kind of became the norm. It attracted approximately 70,000 people in 2024. Tickets ranging this year was around $550 to $3,000. They introduced a more tiered pricing model to reach a lot of different types of people. This change came after a $20 million revenue downfall in 2024, where they didn't sell tickets out. They had a lot more lower attendance. So 2025 faced a lot of similar challenges financially with ticket sales. This was the first time that the festival did not sell out before opening day. So this is where people really started to have issues with it. And of course, when you add on the celebrity factor, this really added to the glamorization where just a lot of celebrities showed up, a lot of high-tech bros show up and major social media and spiritual influencers. This made the event feel less intimate and less free spirit like the 90s held, turning it more into a curated cultural spectacle. So that's a little bit of background history. I know I didn't go too deeply into it, but you could research that. I was more interested in the energetic landscape of Burning Man, so that's what I will be diving into now. So let's first talk about the desert. Deserts themselves are really powerful landscapes. Deserts really symbolize a lot of different things: emptiness, potential, scarcity, but also clarity. Deserts are really spaces where survival is really challenged, and our illusions are a lot more amplified.
Jim Morrison. Told you so, man. How can I help you?
In deserts, you can usually experience mirages, you can experience shifting sand, and really extreme conditions that create an environment of what seems real can vanish in an instant, which just emphasizes projection and perception over grounded reality. You can probably sense where I'm going with this. So Black Rock City is built on this desert, which means it's carrying this energy of a desert. The land itself offers no natural resources. There's really no stable grounding and no, of course, fertile soil for any type of growth. So really, when you are stepping into the desert and stepping into the city, you are kind of pouring your own energy to create the landscape around you. So what is the energy you're pouring in? Well, the desert ties directly to the root chakra, which I will be talking about quite a bit. This is our base center for safety, security, survival, and connection to the earth. So in the desert, the root can be constantly stimulated, but it won't ever truly root. So this extreme environment combined with a kind of liminal, dream-like consciousness can really be disorienting. So time feels very fluid, our senses are very overstimulated, personal boundaries begin to really blur, and this leaves people really energetically open, but really ungrounded. So while the experiences you have may feel very transformative, they are often projections that are acted out of the root chakra or the lower chakras of fear, desire, survival, sexuality. So even though experiences can feel very transformative and very intense, they are often just projections of our inner fears, and desires acted out externally without any true embodiment. So the desert becomes a mirror of our base human instincts, creating kind of a cycle of disorientation, catharsis, and a temporary transformation that really won't go beyond this consciousness bubble. So Black Rock City presents itself as a town, but in reality, it's just a projection. It's really just this elaborate simulation of community that is built on the desert, tents, art installations, and temporary structures. So it looks like a city when you are there because it has camps, people are living there, but none of it is real in a grounding sense. So there's truly no lasting foundation. It's just a stage that appears and disappears just as fast as it was built. So even the creativity is a bit of a projection. I know there's real art in
T'es la meilleure chose qui m'est arrivée, mais aussi la pire chose qui m'est arrivée. Ce jour où je t'ai rencontré, j'aurais peut-être préféré que ce jour ne soit jamais arrivé. La pire des bénédictions, la plus belle des malédictions. De toi je devrais m'éloigner, mais comme dit le dicton, plutôt qu'être seul, mieux vaut être mal accompagné. Tu sais ce qu'on dit, sois près de tes amis les plus chers, mais aussi
encore plus près de tes adversaires.
mais ma meilleure ennemie c'est toi, puis moi. Le pire c'est toi et moi.
Mais si tu cherches encore à voir, oublie-moi. Le pire c'est toi et moi. Pourquoi ton prénom me blesse quand il se cache juste là dans l'espace? C'est quelle émotion, la haine
Feel the rhythm of the streets, neon lights and neon dreams, bloody fists, they feel no pain when there's so much more to gain. Hunting season, if you will, tell me where'd you rather be? I can hardly see the moon Trying so hard to release you out of the misery. Hold on to your wishes if you can't hold on to me. Forgive me for letting you down. Forgive me for letting you down again. I guess I'm not strong enough right now. They will finally feel the flames, flames that run down through my veins. I will make the city burn. We're not planning to return. Trying so hard to be free, to make you see what I see. Hold on to your wishes if you can't hold on to me. Forgive me for letting you down. Forgive me for letting you down again. I guess I'm not strong enough right now. Forgive me for letting you